Let's add another podcast here on Archaic Humans from the book People of the Earth. So just few more details than what is in the main book. So we are looking now here at reversed polarity and normal polarity in terms of climatic events of the Pleistocene. So instead of time, we are looking here at polarities. Stratigraphic record of the Pleistocene from deep sea course V28 to 238 from the Solomon Plateau in the Pacific Ocean. So that's in the southwestern Pacific at this time, but if you go back in time, it's been moving northward, of course. The Matuyama-Bruns boundary occurs at about 780,000 years ago at a depth of 1200 centimeters, so 39.3 feet. Above it, a sawtooth-like curve records the relative size of the world's oceans and ice caps and identifies 8 complete glacial and interglacial cycles, a more complete record of the middle and upper Pleistocene that comes from land sediments. The Vostok ice core from Antarctica covers the past 335,000 years, which is now extended to 800,000 years and documents periodicity of about 100,000 years for transitions from cold to warm conditions and back. So we're talking about the transition from Pliocene to Pleistocene ice age timescale change. So I won't go into these, but basically warm stage and cold stage, we will look at other plots of the same thing, looking at this from other evidences like the Vostok ice core that's mentioned here, and the age numbers are put in here as well. So this is the upper Pleistocene, middle Pleistocene, and the beginning of the Pleistocene. Okay, what happens? So if you look at Homo ergaster and early modern humans, starting at 1.8 million years ago, which is approximately the boundary of the beginning of the Pleistocene ice ages. So we have over here Africa, Southwest Asia, Asia, Europe, and the Americas. So you have Homo ergaster, some unknown uncertainties here, Sangiran in Asia and Dmanisi in Europe. And if you come forward in time, you have East Turkana, so in Africa, so this is Olduvai Gorge, East Turkana, Ubedia, Homo ergaster with some uncertainty here, Homo erectus, so found in Asia and Europe. Kilombe site here by 750,000, Banmaita in Asia, and so on. So I won't read all of these, but you can see here early Homo sapiens found in Africa by around 300,000 years ago. Human physical type unknown in Southwest Asia, main Asia here, and Neanderthals in Europe. We'll come back to Americas a little bit later on, and no settlements found here as well. So Homo sapiens, of course, starting about 100-some thousand years ago, 135,000 years or even older. Neanderthals and modern humans coexisted in Southwest Asia, human physical type unknown here that we mentioned, and we don't know whether there was out of Africa affecting these lineages as well, species successions and so on. Okay, so the Pleistocene glaciers in northern hemisphere at the maximum extent, shorelines caused by low sea levels are unknown. So this is the well-known ice sheets over North America and Europe, which have left many evidences, including the Great Lakes that were carved out and now full of water after the glacier melted, and so on. So these happen on 100,000 year cycles, glaciation, deglaciation, driven by orbital forcing and then internal ice albedo feedbacks, for example. All of them are associated with vegetation changes, but we are much more interested in how they would have affected climate worldwide and the evolution of us and our relatives. So this is again visiting the making of Acheulean bifaces. I won't go into the details, but there are various times involved here. You can see 0.7 million years ago, 0.3 to 3 million years ago, and so on. So this goes back up to 6.2 million 2 miles or 10 kilometers in terms of raw materials at source. So there are various interpretations of the materials used, the heat treatment, the technologies used, and whether they evolved independently or the abundance of the tools can be interpreted as something about the culture, or whether that there was a social network where technology transfer was happening, and so on. So we'll revisit some of these things later on. In terms of distribution of Neanderthals, their culture and related technologies, also shown are sites mentioned in the rest of the chapter here. So you can see here area of distribution of cultures with related technology. So how do you interpret these? That did they evolve independently, or that there was some communication happening between them? Okay, and the distribution also probably is related to climate in some ways. Plus there are also details about whether genetically there was species that were coming out of here, or there were independent haplotypes. We will see what that means later on. So areas of Mousterian culture distribution here. So you can see again various names. I won't read all of them, but this distribution of cultures with related technology is not only in Africa but extends into the Middle East, in South Asia, Southeast Asia, and into China, and so on. And later evidences also we will see at the Denisovan in the caves of Siberia, and so on and so forth. So we'll see later on that climate change, sea level change, and whether climate drove out of Africa migrations, and so on. All these things have to be understood, but in the meantime we have to also look at skeleton of the male Neanderthal here with that of the modern male. The Neanderthal is more robust and stockier than his modern counterpart. Readers may be interested to note that thanks to more recent genetic research, we now know that Neanderthals would have typically been light-skinned, and if anything, the first anatomically modern humans in Europe would have been dark-skinned. So the idea is Neanderthals had similar large brain, but were they somehow cognitively inferior to the modern male, and whether there was conflicts and they got eliminated by the more intelligent human maybe, or whether they just bred with humans and eventually just merged in populations like it's happening, let's say, with the Aborigines and the colonizers in Australia. All those questions we will come back to a little bit later on, but just look at the various features here between the Neanderthals and anatomically modern humans. The growing efficiency of Stone Age technology is shown by the ability of ancient stoneworkers to produce ever larger number of cutting edges from a pound of flint or other fine-grained rock. The Neanderthals were far more efficient stone artisans than their predecessors, so they had some advantage there. By the same token, Homo sapiens used a blade technology that produced up to 9.1 meter of blades per pound of flint. Okay, so this is just comparing 1 pound of flint. From a pound of flint, pebble tool had 3 inches of cutting edge with Homo habilis 2 million years ago. The hand axe had about 12 inches of cutting edge when Homo erectus was doing this 300,000 years ago. Mousterian flake tools provided about 30 inches of cutting edge by Neanderthals and contemporaries about 100,000 years ago, and the upper Paleolithic blade production resulted in up to 30 feet of cutting edge when Homo sapiens were doing 30,000 years ago. Does this indicate technology improvements, cognition, brain developments, and so on? Are questions that are not so easily answered. But to summarize this chapter on archaic humans, this chapter covers a long period of time from about 1.9 million years to 300,000 to 30,000 years ago. We describe the climatic events of the Great Ice Age, the Pleistocene, between about 1.6 million and 120,000 years ago. These complex fluctuations between glacial maxima and much shorter interglacial periods were backdrop to the evolution of not only archaic humans like Homo ergaster, Homo erectus, and Homo heidelbergensis, but also of modern people, Homo sapiens, who will be described in a future chapter that we'll look at. Homo ergaster had evolved from Homo habilis or some other early Homo form in tropical Africa by 1.9 million years ago. It or its close relative then radiated out of Africa into Asia, perhaps by 1.8 million years ago, where it appears as Homo erectus. At about the same time, a small number of Homo erectus, sometimes known as Homo georgicus, settled perhaps unsuccessfully in Eastern Europe, but were defeated by harsh climatic conditions. These population movements were part of a general radiation of mammalian species soon afterward. So you can imagine the relation between them, hunters, gatherers, mammals, and the mutual dependence, at least hunter-gatherers depending on mammals for food. Sometimes after 1.8 million years ago, humans domesticated fire, but the date is much debated. Full control may not have come until much later. One consequence may have been a growing importance of cooked food to human life and development. So we will see later on that there are ideas about how the jaw muscles changed, how that allowed the cranium to grow and brain to grow, and so on and so forth. In decreasing the gut size by eating cooked food, releasing energy for the brain, because brain is a very metabolically heavy energy organ. Homo erectus evolved slowly in Asia, relying both on stone technology and bamboo artifacts in forested environments, surviving until after 100,000 years ago, and possibly as recently as 30,000 years ago. Homo heidelbergensis, a new human form with a larger brain, feasibly evolved out of Homo ergaster in tropical Africa. Homo heidelbergensis may be associated with more sophisticated tool technology known from the distinctive, refined Acheulean hand axes that appeared after about 600,000 years ago. This was the time when hominins settled in Europe permanently. So there is a continuous settlement from 600,000 years ago. Homo heidelbergensis is believed by many to have been the last common ancestors of the Neanderthals of Europe and the Near East and Western Eurasia, and of the African origin Homo sapiens. Okay. Archaic humans were adept opportunistic hunters who also relied on wild plant foods. They probably also scavenged predator kills, but were capable of killing large animals. So cooperation would have evolved after the evolution of these technologies, especially spears that could be thrown. We will talk a little bit about how cooperation evolved out of this a little bit later on. However, they probably lacked the full linguistic skill of the modern humans. So when did language evolve? This is something we'll look at as well. Neanderthals developed more sophisticated tool-making technology than their predecessors, such as Homo ergaster, Homo erectus, Homo heidelbergensis, and were more skilled hunters and foragers, and were the first humans to bury some of their dead. So rituals and so on evolved, and maybe some belief in higher power, spiritual existence beyond death, and so on. Neanderthals and the little understood Denisovans disappear from fossil record by around 30,000 years ago. So by all means we think they went extinct around that time, even though reasons are not completely understood. After millions of years of hominin evolution, only Homo sapiens remain. We are the focus of the rest of this book. So that kind of leads us to the next chapter on humans out of Africa in both books. So I'll come back and add the podcast from this book as supplements to the main book as we go along. Okay.